Okay, well here we are in the National Maritime Museum, and what we're doing is commemorating today being the 23rd of August, and it's a date we have every year for commemorating the transatlantic slave trade and its ultimate abolition. And it's interesting that this is the only public space, really, in terms of the heritage sector, apart from the Museum of Slavery in Liverpool, where this day is commemorated on any scale, in any way, shape or form.
How can you rationalize the slave trade? How would you explain it to someone that never knew about it? What would you say it was?
In order to rationalize, if I needed to rationalize the atrocities out of which the slave trade was composed, I would have to say it's business. Business is about making money. There was no other justification, no other rationalization. Of course, a lot of moralistic mumbo-jumbo and religious invocations were brought to bear, but no, ultimately it was all about money, and that's it.
Can you give us an idea of what kind of pain and suffering people went through?
It's impossible to describe the pain and suffering people went through, because that must have been just something entirely nightmarishly personal. What you can say is that these activities, these trades, this business resulted in the uprooting, in the deracination, in the ruthlessness of tens of millions of people, or nowadays hundreds of millions of people, who compose the African diaspora in the Western world and smaller diasporas in other parts of the planet.
So this African diaspora in the rest of the world, is there some form of identity crisis? Is there not a desire to go back to the roots?
This is an interesting question. In terms of identity crisis, definitely. What is the African in the West? How much can the African person in the diaspora say one is an African beyond the color of the skin, beyond some vestigial traditions? What is the connection to Africa? Is it in language? Is it in forms of behavior? Is it certainly not in family terms or familiarity with culture and language? So what is happening is the creation of other identities, hybrid identities, new identities, which are suitable to being African in the outside of the continent in the 21st century.
Is there any parallel to be drawn to the massive amount of refugees we see today? I mean, masses of refugees are coming into Britain and everywhere through our wars, largely.
I would say no. There's maybe in numbers there may be. I mean, we just heard that there are over 1 million Syrian children alone as refugees. So possibly in numbers, collectively, we could be talking about the same sets, but not in terms of the degradation of their experience and the stripping of people of their identity, of their names by force, and working them to death for money.
So how did you arrive to be doing what you're doing, organizing today? What drew you here?
Okay, well, I used to work here at the Maritime Museum. I used to be the archive learning officer in this institution, and the Maritime Museum has since 1998 been running yearly commemorations, and because of my interest in this set of subjects, I naturally gravitated to being involved in upholding the day and keeping the flame alive. It's something which I gladly do. Even though I've left the institution, I'm still a part of it.
And how does today's activities here compare with what's going on around the world?
They're very low level. This day has, unfortunately, a fairly low profile globally. There is some activity in France, some activity obviously in Haiti and other parts of the Caribbean. But in terms of it being globally recognized, actively recognized today, no, its profile is almost supernaturally low. But year by year, more and more people are interested in it. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
And just give me your name, please.
I'm Steve Martin, S.I. Martin.
Okay, and what would you recommend I go to and see now?
Oh, there's an excellent lecture by Dr. Temi Odomosu, now in the lecture theatre, looking at an 18th century cartoon, The New Union Club, and it's well worth a look at.
What I wanted to do today was really take you behind the scenes of this print. As I mentioned, it's in a few collections, but it's also here at the Maritime Museum, so it's at the speaker back here. It's a very complex print, and it really explores and represents almost every negative racist trope about black people available in the 19th century.
I've come here today because my family are descendants of enslaved Africans from Jamaica. My family came to live in this borough in the early 60s, and as a child growing up, I was unaware of the importance of this part of the world to my history. And so I have made it an occasion each year to come here and to thank my ancestors for their fortitude and all that they did to ensure that I am here today.
So what do you know of your ancestry? How far can you trace it? Do you know what country you started from?
Well, again, that's all part of the kind of history of collateral damage around individuals and families, because we're only now recognizing that there were records kept, but not in our names, but in terms of properties. So some of us are able to trace our ancestries through that line because of the meticulous record keeping of the plantation owners.
Do you know what country you originated from in Africa?
Again, that would be something, would be a guesswork, I suppose. But I'm aware through my DNA that I come from the west of Africa, namely the Senegambia and Ghana, the Songhai region, empire.
You're not going to go back and learn the language and customs?
Absolutely. I have made all preparations for. This is an island. I belong to a continent.
I wish you well in your new start.
Thank you.
London was at the very apex of this trade. Remember, in the 18th century, at various times, Jamaica, Barbados were deemed the wealthiest places on this planet. And of course, the people there were rich, but what was being made was all coming to England. We found so many of the institutions that we now take for granted, from the stock exchange to Lloyd's Insurance, to banks, etc. And if you combine that with the story looking east, of what was happening with the East India Company, you realize what a hold this country had on the world.
This is what you learned at school?
Oh no, I just learned that there were Africans who were slaves. End of story.
Well, that's all I've learned. Tell me more.
Well, Africa is the cradle of human civilization. So Africans are the first people of planet Earth. African women are the first mothers of planet Earth.
So, some people say that Jesus and I don't know if Jesus was black or the Jews were black in ancient Israel. You heard that?
There are different creation stories. All I know is that as an African, my African creation story is the first.